Welcome back to Why Blank Lost, or this week, Why Blank and Blank Lost. I'm David Bloomberg, and as many of you probably can guess, I am so happy they finally got rid of Kelley. I'm in my party outfit. Here we are. Yay. Now, less excited about Lauren losing, but her game took a solid turn for the worse this week. And of course, joining me to talk about all of that and party with me is my co-host, Ovi Kabir.
Woo! I am here. Happiest way to spend my Friday evenings is with nobody else but David Bloomberg and to do a party because Kelley has been evicted. I might be less happy about this than David just because David has been waiting for this moment because she's the antithesis of essentially the entire
Yes.
game, that of the rules. And now it's very apt that we now will probably have our longest episode covering Kelley and Lauren. But
Yeah.
yes, what a week it's been.
Yes. Yeah. In one night, we got rid of the baby of the house right after we got rid of the toddler of the house. Meanwhile, we saw mom and dad fighting all week long and then making up and then fighting and then making up and then fighting and so on. Now, since this is a double podcast for a double eviction, it's going to be longer than usual. And that means, unfortunately, I had to drop out a few examples I otherwise would have used for certain behavior. But don't worry, there were so many, especially for Kelley, that you won't even notice any are gone. Uh, Now, even with two very different players to discuss, we will follow our usual path of comparing how they played to a set of guiding rules I originally wrote back in 2004 and have modified ever since. We'll analyze their actions using what we saw on TV, live feeds, interviews, and other information. And the most recent published version is at robhasawebsite.com/Big Brother Rules. Usually, we have some other things to discuss about the week in general. This week, I say one thing beyond our two players, but that one thing is kind of all encompassing because that one thing, quote unquote, is Morgan. She truly drove all the action this week in both good and bad ways. Strategically, she absolutely took over Vince's HOH and pushed him into doing what she wanted him to do. I, I'm about to say a bunch of bad stuff about Kelley, so I will give her this. She had a good joke on live feeds where she said to Keanu, it was nice of Morgan to let Vince stay in the HOH room during her HOH.
We got a lot of jokes. We have a
Yeah.
lot of clips from this entire week. I mean, it's what a storyline that I could not have imagined taking place. And we didn't really get a showman. I mean, yeah, we had Riley showmans, but I feel like that one pre-jury dissipated afterwards. And we have this strange feat, whatever man's that has kind of taken
The cheat
form
man's.
within the house.
I've given in to using what most on social media are calling it, the cheat man's.
And it has taken over the house. I mean, it's
Yeah.
become a part. The editors have completely taken it over for the episodes. The players have talked about it. I mean, it has actually impacted the game very interestingly in a way where not just of like, oh, these people are aligned together, but it's like the morality of it. I think has impacted
Yeah.
how certain players view it.
And yeah, the awkwardness of it. Now, with all of that said so far, despite Vince claiming to Lauren that he was forced into the moves he made, he wasn't. He's a grown man, though sometimes it's hard to tell with all the crying. And he could, in theory, have made his own decisions. In the end, after lots of whining and arguing, instead he made the decisions Morgan wanted him to make. At this point, she has to be the favorite to win. I, I guess it's possible there will be a series of events where someone like, I mean, in theory, Vince could turn on her, but we know that's not going to happen. But someone like Keanu wins HOH and decides to target her, and she doesn't win veto, and there's enough votes. But I mean, I think Ashley and Vince both want to keep her. So one of the two of them would have to be up against her. So it would take a very specific set of circumstances to have her go out next or fourth. Not impossible, but uh, I, you know, the then on top of that, the zing of Morgan tangentially hitting Vince, which really should have been directed at Vince, not at Morgan, but uh, it made them briefly pause their activities and go into a world of denial. But that lasted such a short time that literally, as we saw on Wednesday's episode, he was proclaiming it's 100% platonic friendship. And they both said there's no way it could be perceived any other way. On the live feeds, we saw them later with Vince telling Morgan, I love you more than you'll probably ever know or believe. And then he went into saying he wants what's best for her in the game and he wants her to succeed. And then he cried and said he didn't think he'd meet somebody like her in there. He hopes they're in each other's lives afterwards, no matter what. He kept, like, in between every very lovey type phrase, he would add something in to couch it sort of in game terms. But this was clearly not game related. And then in the HOH bed later that same night on live feeds, Vince whispered to her, I love you so much. And she said, I know, the feeling's mutual. Now, for those of you who are not on video, you did not get to see Ovi just rubbing his head, just like, oh my gosh. I obviously don't know what's going on in their heads, but they are living in more of a fantasy world of delusion than Keanu. If they think that they can act the way they are and say these things out loud and still pretend it's obvious, they're just pals. And then Vince even had the nerve to shout out his parentheses ex girlfriend in the second vote of the night.
The only way I feel like it could come all around is Vince is at the end of the game and is essentially saying, this was part of the plan. I tricked you, Morgan. I tricked Lauren. I tricked every single person. And then his partner outside the house it was all part of the plan. You know, this is what a pickle he has put himself into. And he has no one but to blame himself. And yeah, it's so strange just seeing all this stuff. And then you would think after the Zing bot this past week, it was kind of a wake-up call initially, but no, they have continued strong force, keep moving forward into this cheat man's, and like you've mentioned too, it's really impacted so many facets of the game.
Yeah, I mean, when people are literally leaving the room because it's so awkward because you're hugging for such a long time, that's not good. When Keanu is making a joke about Cheating Island, which makes the episode, the recap of the episode, and their Instagram and TikTok posts, like literally their Instagram has something saying, is it Big Brother or Cheating Island? You know, it's not good, man. And for them, the part that really gets me, I mean, they're two consenting adults. They're impacting on Vince's girlfriend, which is bad, but they're two consenting adults. Stop lying to us about it. Just stop it.
Yeah, it's interesting because we really haven't seen, I feel like the show beforehand take this level of, they try to protect some of their final five, final four, whoever it might be, final six at this point, their players essentially. And especially when it's like in some sort of relationship, they want to, no, they're kind of putting all the dirty laundry and saying, this is not on us. This is all on you all. And kudos for that. So we get to see the story unfold in front of us.
I mean, I think they hid it from TV only viewers for a fair amount of time until it finally had to be said. There was no way they could avoid it. I think they actually, I don't give much credit to production very often, especially this season. But I think that they introduced it at about the right time and let it, grow as part of the storyline, which it did.
Yeah. It's a huge part of the story. I mean, we haven't even gone through our segments and we're talking about this because it has impacted everything in this. And I mean, I think when we talk about Lauren going home, this is going to be such a huge portion of it, because it truly has changed the game in such a weird way, because it's like they are, yes, a showman's in the game, but also they're denying it. So the players are like confused, but also not confused. Because I feel like if it was a straight on show, it'd be a different way to tackle this for the players. But since it's not, they're also getting confusing. So in a weird way, it's working game-wise for them, but also it's just, yeah, it's a very strange situation that I'm not sure if we'll see again like this.
No, I would imagine not. Um, all right. Well, with all of that, do you have anything or anyone else you want to discuss before we move on to our semi-regular segment?
All I will say is that it is impressive that our finals twos and ones are still in, or not final twos and ones, our winner picks are still in the game. And the odds are one of us is probably going to win this season. I mean, the way it's looking like it looks like we might just win here. Whether it's Ashley or Keanu, and who would have thought if you asked us week one,
Oh,
how's
week
it
one,
looking,
we were
guys?
disavowing. Well, I was disavowing at that point, and you were like, well, I won't disavow, but
Exactly, and I think right now we have ironically swapped rooting for each other's winners picks in different ways. And I guess maybe that's the sauce. That's how we can get them to win. I root for yours, you root for mine, and we'll
there
see
we
what
go.
happens.
Yep. Yep. All right. Well, then let's go to our semi-regular segment. Julie Chen Moonves is wrong about blank. This week, in her interview with Dalton Ross, she kind of tiptoed the line about almost being wrong enough for me to call her out when it came to a couple topics until she answered a question about my winner pick, Keanu's chances to win. It wasn't even much, but in a parenthetical, she added, in discussing Keanu's resume, she said it's, quote, so strong. And this just speaks to how little she watches or understands the game. The only part of his resume that is strong is winning comps. But why has he won so many comps? He's had to because he plays so poorly. He made Ashley so mad earlier this week by being himself that she wanted to vote him out instead of Kelley or Lauren. He told her that she didn't understand something, and she later ranted to the camera, "You don't understand nothing in this game. You're only here because you won your way, not because of your social game. Your social game sucks. Your reads on the house suck." And she was right about all of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where a broken clock is going to be right twice a day, right? And we're seeing that in some shapes or forms. I mean, this is truly, I think, probably your favorite segment because David has been howling across the mountains about the game of Keanu, the game of Kelley, and I think you actually, I'm trying to remember your prediction last week was both Keanu and Kelley going home. So
Yes, and yours was
you got
Ashley and
half
Lauren.
of it. You got a
Yeah,
half of it this
yeah.
week.
Yeah. So, yes, your winner pick is 100% correct about my winner pick. And Julie, as usual, the super casual is wrong. All right.
Always
Well,
surprised.
before we get to the rules, I do want to mention that Survivor 49 is almost here, and while we don't have Big Brother rules related merch, we do have the Survivor rules on a poster. You can go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed, scroll down, click on it, order it. In addition to the poster, you can also get that same design on a shirt or the checklist on a shirt. So again, go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed and you can click to your heart's content. Kelley came into the game without any clue about how it worked. Lauren came in as a longtime fan who should have known how it worked. Yet they went out back to back in the double eviction. Even having such different Big Brother backgrounds, we're going to discover that they had a surprising amount of overlap in terms of problems with their games. Let's figure out how that ended up happening because at RHAP, we know Big Brother and we know why Kelley and Lauren lost.
We do.
The first and most important rule is, of course, to scheme and plot. I say, of course, but this is not something Kelley knew. As different as Kelley and Lauren were in this game, though, they both managed to fail horribly at this rule, just in different ways. We'll start with Kelley. She had absolutely no idea what she was doing in the game, and she never learned. I noticed even in our preseason podcast, based on the very little information that we had, that she was lying about how much Big Brother she had seen. For those who may not remember, in one place she said 2 seasons, or she said 1 or 2 seasons. And I was like, you don't misremember whether it's 1 or 2, which tells me it's none. And that was quickly confirmed just by watching her. But she's continued to lie into the exit interviews. She claimed to Dalton Ross that she watched 2 seasons. Yet she immediately then said she didn't know anything about Big Brother. And this was the exact type of thing that allowed me to catch her lie to start with, because that's a contradiction. There's no way you can watch 2 seasons of a show and know nothing about it.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of our biggest worries. One kind of reviewing Kelly's interviews and
Mm-hmm.
conversations, especially after week one, where she believed that the best strategy to go into the house was one without a strategy, one where you can adapt
Yes.
or make your own strategy. We hear this so many times where Big Brother players talk about wanting to be adaptable, wanting to go in the home, and that is very important. It's important to be flexible, one of our rules, but it is important to have some form of strategy going in there, and she had none. And I mean, I guess maybe the strategy was put volunteer herself on the block, and we see that manifest itself in many different ways. And then, to her credit, eventually she said maybe this wasn't the best idea, realizing maybe far too long, maybe 6 weeks down the line, you become a pawn. So it's one of those things where with Kelley, she fooled us in a little way, but also didn't fool us, because she fooled us because we trusted that maybe she watched a season or two and you can learn how to play the games.
I
But
never
you weren't
twisted
fooled.
it.
You were never
No.
fooled.
I said she had never watched anything. And then, even again,
I was
talking
fooled.
to Dalton Ross, she said, I said often in the house that it felt like I had just been explained the rules of a board game and was just expected to play it. But of course, there's only one person to blame for this, and that is herself. She could have watched seasons of Big Brother. She could have learned about the game. She chose not to. And it showed, especially here in Rule 1, because while she claimed to Julie that it was easy making allies and people came to her, that was just more of her absolute BS. She never really had allies until the very end when she was left with Ava and Lauren, who also didn't really have any other allies remaining, and they were pretty much just hanging out because they were friends. Even when she thought she had allies, they really weren't. Like her big reveal that she was Vince's ally. And, the funny thing is, he later said on live feeds that he essentially hadn't talked to her since week 2.
Yeah, and if you watch just the show, it makes it seem like Kelley and Vince are incredibly close throughout the entirety of the season and portions of it. And there's a level of betrayal she feels. But Vince really wasn't doing much more with Kelley than he was with everybody else.
Right.
And Kelley just really latched on and believed in the final twos, final threes. And it's kind of one of the things where you see in front of you that when your allies putting you and all your allies on the block, and they're going home week after week, they're not really your ally. And when your strategy is built on your ally, it doesn't work well when they're really not your ally. She couldn't see
Yes.
that at all.
Yeah. So you already mentioned Kelley starting out in the most bizarre way possible, which was really an indicator of her game to come. She volunteered to be the pawn in week 1, telling Vince, who was HOH at the time, I think I would make a little bit of a name for myself by going up. It might help my game. Only someone with absolutely zero knowledge of Big Brother would believe that volunteering on week 1 would help their game. And then she later tried denying to other people that she volunteered, which was ridiculous because they already knew, in part because she told some of them. And then, of course, she volunteered 2 more times because she just kept believing that she would earn some sort of loyalty points she could cash in later. Later never arrived because the points didn't exist.
Yeah, and I see this so much with certain players. They say that if I put myself on the block for you, I'm showing I'm a team player. They're
Mhm.
going to feel like they owe me one, or they're going to have like, thank you for that. No player will feel like they owe you ever at all. All they will feel like is that you are now expendable. You are able to go on the block over and over and over
Yep.
again and never have to worry whether they're going to upset you, because you were on the block last week. Someone else put you, like, I'm just following the trend. You can't blame me. Like, and that is truly the lack of understanding with the game. Like, people say halfway through the season, they're like, "Well, pawns go home." Well, if you watched just 2 seasons, you know that pawns always go home.
Especially the season she claimed to watch, which one of which was last season. How much time did we spend yelling last season about people that volunteered to go up and then went home? Like, there's no way you could have watched last season and thought that it was a good idea to volunteer if you had one active brain cell in your head.
Yeah, and I think with the addition of the basically triple nominations
Right.
week in and week out, and then you have the competition to take yourself out, it empowered certain house kids, especially Kelley, to feel
Mm-hmm.
like this is a right strategy because now I have the options to always fight my way back. And that's not how, like, maybe that's how Big Brother this season's played, and maybe some future seasons, but I hope it's not. That's just not Big Brother.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, another problem was she had no idea how to even talk to people in a strategic way. After her first nomination, she wouldn't make promises to anyone. Ashley, Amy, and Rachel wanted her to promise them safety if she won HOH. And her response was, "Well, I just won't try to win." But that's not what people want. People want an ally who will try to win HOH and then keep them safe, not someone who's going to avoid it and let someone else win, and therefore they might be in danger. It was yet another sign of how Kelley truly knew nothing about the game. And again, as the game went on, she still didn't learn. Even Ava clocked her, saying at one point, Kelley has only focused on who not to trust, and she's not developed any loyalties. And the thing was that Kelley trusted pretty much nobody because she kept finding reasons not to. For example, Rachel tried to let Kelley know that she wanted to work together multiple times, but Kelley didn't believe a word of it and kept breaking whatever trust Rachel tried to give her.
Yeah, and it's when you look at the way she's playing that play style of kind of a gunslinger, where you just keep on trying, you think you can win the competition, but you realize that you're not making these deep connections with other players. And so they're going to make other connections with other players. So she would get offended so easily and so quickly when she saw other relationships are deepening other than hers. And in turn, like you mentioned, kind of turn on it and reject any notion of working there. And, I think we're going to see a contrast when we talk about it, where we talk about somebody who really is kind of pushing away people and somebody who just lets them come to them. And with Kelley, it was neither. She would push away people and she wouldn't try to come to them either. So it's a weird mixture of it. And it's one of those things where if you don't know the game, you can learn it as you go on. But then you might have an inability to like reject strategy. And I feel like with Kelley, she wanted to reject any form of strategy in the game.
I don't know that she would know it to reject it. I don't think she knew what it was. And like I said, she never learned how to play. And that's probably her biggest problem. She's not the first recruit to come in without a lot of game knowledge. She may be the first to have exactly zero game knowledge, and certainly the first to be so proud of it. And, definitely the first to make it this long without managing to get any clue at all along the way. Even Keanu said about her, she doesn't know how to play. She's just really good at puzzles. And Kelley herself recognized it at times, telling us on, at live feeds or telling other players. Now, a few examples. Early on, I think after her first time volunteering, Kelley cried to herself saying, I think I effed up. I thought I could do something cool, something different. Yes, indeed, she did F up, which is likely to happen when you come into a game without even studying the basics of it. Later in the game, she told the cameras, I don't really know how to play this game. But she said she doesn't know if she's doing well or not. Well, that takes a huge amount of ignorance to not even know if you're doing well. Here's a hint, a little belated. No, you weren't. Then, after Adrian was voted out, Kelley told the cameras, I wish I threw the blockbuster. I wish Adrian was here instead of me. I don't deserve to be here. He's better at this game than me. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to play this game. Now, believe me, Kelley, I wish you'd thrown blockbuster too. But again, she admitted not knowing what she was doing while never making any attempt to try to figure it out. Later when Rachel asked her if she wanted to win, she said, yeah. Rachel asked if she thought she was playing a good game, and Kelley replied, I don't know. I've only seen one season. I don't know what a good game is. And again, saying one season there, two seasons elsewhere, caught in that lie. But I think the last line says it all. It, I don't know what a good game is. She doesn't know what any game is.
Yeah, and I was sad watching her play in certain ways because you want them to be able to pick something up. You want the underdog to be able to kind of start working their way through it,
I didn't. I
especially
just
when
wanted her
she
out.
can. When I wanted to get something for some traction because she was winning these competitions, her back against the wall, but every single time she would swing, it was in the wrong direction. And yes, like you mentioned, it's you can't really, you don't know how a game is played if you've never seen it, but also there's certain things you can pick up. And I just don't feel like for Kelley that was the notion. I think more than anything, I think we talked about it with Will, where they get complacent a little bit. That after you survive that initial portion of the game where you think your game is done and you have a second life, and for Kelley, she had probably 9 lives. She was a cat in the game where she kept coming back. You're just happy of how you've done, And I think we saw that really manifest herself in the way of how she would try to scheme, how she would plot this, because it was let it come to her, let the game come to her, and the game was just flying by.
Well, it's interesting. You said, you talked about learning the game, learning something. When she came out to talk to Julie, she bragged about having learned how to play chess. So she had time and inclination to learn how to play chess in the Big Brother house, but she never bothered to learn how to play Big Brother in the Big Brother house.
Yeah, and learning chess will only get you so far in the Big
Right.
Brother house. If anything, it's easier to learn the game of Big Brother or watch a season of Big Brother, just put it in the background. I mean, it is a game for $750,000.
Yeah.
Please, please, please just watch a season, learn a little bit, just read something
Yeah.
about the show before you go on.
Yeah. Now, even while she refused to learn the game, Kelley got upset about the consequences of that attitude. For example, she talked about being, quote, so mad when that she kept getting blindsided by votes. But that's what happens when you don't actually know how to play. And others saw it as well. I mentioned Rachel trying to reach out to her earlier, but Rachel knew she couldn't actually work with Kelley in any serious way. She asked Kelley about planning for the future, and Kelley talked about getting rid of the people who don't contribute to the housework. That's not the game.
It's a part living with other people, and I think, and I don't want to skip too far into about the irritation of things because I think she was very clear about how she recognized how she irritated players. But I think that was a part of when you realize your personality, how you are, you
Mm-hmm.
know how you are, David. I know how I am, and it's like an idea of when you're around other people, that personality manifests itself, and that might also change the way you'll tackle your strategy in the game. And for somebody like Kelley, I really think she needed allies in the house where she could work with, and that's why we see her so caught up in with Vince, or where she feels like she rejected Rachel because she's like, "You cross me, you cross my allies, I cannot work with you." And so her strategy was predicated that she would have people she could work with. I think as she was forming some form of strategy throughout the game, and it just kind of faltered.
I mean, I don't think she ever did form any sort of strategy. I mean, like, speaking of housework, she tried one of her ideas of great strategy, which was going on a cleaning strike so the house would be messier and Rachel would keep her over Ashley. She actually believed Rachel would base her voting decision not on strategy, but on who was messy. And then later, after a situation we'll discuss in Rule 5, she convinced herself that it worked and she was proud, even though there was still no way Rachel was ever voting out Ashley. So I don't know how it worked, quote unquote. But that's the mind you're dealing with here. Um, And then something I mentioned in our Why Catherine Lost podcast, when she was nominated up against Catherine as well, instead of trying to get people on her side, she just hung out with Catherine away from everyone else for most of the time. Rachel and Morgan even talked about it, saying, why isn't one talking to us? I don't understand. No, it was the nominees who didn't understand.
Yeah, and it's, again, it comes down to basic game knowledge of how the game is run. And, when you watch a season or watch any portion of it, it's the idea of like you need to garner those votes. And I think that at some point with self-preservation, I'm going to win. Like her only form of strategy as it really truly develops, I will win a competition to save
Right.
myself.
Yeah.
And she talks about that where she says, no one's going to save me. I have to save myself.
That's
and
like the Julie Chen Moonves form of strategy.
Yeah, yes. And it was, very apparent. And to her credit, she did multiple times. The cat who had 9 lives, but it's not a winning strategy.
No. Well, it's not a strategy. Um,
Not a good strategy. It's a strategy, but it's not a good one. No.
Now, as we move on here, Kelley was not the only one who really wasn't made for Big Brother. Back at the end of August, Lauren agreed with Ava when she said, I don't have a brain that was made for Big Brother. I don't think my brain works the same way as some of these people's brains work. And I agree. Lauren did not have that kind of thinking. She's a so-called super fan who has been watching since she was a young kid. But even after all those years, she hasn't figured out the point of the game or the fact that you need to lie. Lauren, much like Kelley with other aspects of the game, never really learned that part, even though she should have known coming in. And indeed, because of what she said pregame, I had high hopes for Lauren early on. And she actually started the game off decently, agreeing with whatever anyone says, keeping her own thoughts to herself, just floating along while consciously playing the middle.
100%. I mean, I think early game to even middle game, I was very impressed. You and I both talked about it. The way Lauren was navigating herself into the house where she was part of conversations. She was in the wall of like when people were talking about things, but also never somebody were like, we need to point at her and get her out. Or why is she in the room? It was more so, oh, Lauren is here. Let's work with Lauren in some shape or capacity. And we saw people also advocating for Lauren too, where we see Rachel trying to pull Lauren to her side. In many ways, Lauren was kind of a form of a swing vote, or not even a swing vote, but like an HOH vote, where even when she was HOH, they knew other people had influence over her. So they tried to talk her through things. And that was the thing, is she was one of the few players in the house where you could discuss and sway her options if you had a reasonable conversation and argument for it. So midway through the game, I thought Lauren was very impressive, but I think really what it amounts to is the killer instinct in the game where you need to strike. You need to be able to know when to take action. And we saw Lauren let the game unfortunately pass by her in a lot of crucial moments.
Yeah, I mean, she definitely does not have the killer instinct. She was just always so scared to talk to many different people. And, when she had a conversation she didn't want to have, she'd be in the HOH room looking over here instead of looking them in the eye like you should do when you're having a normal conversation as a human. If Lauren had gone on her own, I was going to do the whole podcast facing away. She she had previously said she was playing the middle, but then it turned out she hadn't talked to half the house because she was scared or because she didn't want to or she was comfortable with the people she was with. When she became HOH and wanted to nominate Will, she admitted she hadn't talked a single word of game with him. Fast forward to this past week, and she kept hearing things about Morgan and Ashley from Vince, but she wouldn't actually talk to them herself until Tuesday night, which it was way too late by that time. She relied almost entirely on her final 2 deal with Vince and trusted him to be honest with her and lead her to the promised land. which was clearly not a wise thing to do. And she even acknowledged it to Mike Bloom, saying, I think that my game really, really did suffer from the decisions that he made. Even when I told him that those decisions were going to hurt my game, he continued to make them, which is very unfortunate.
And I think that's what impacts the way I review and look at her game almost with hindsight, knowing that the decision she made to kind of play that middle, to work her way through the house, it wasn't that it was not a conscious decision. It was more of an inability to want to make waves in the house. Because, like you mentioned, she was so worried about what her ripple effect would be that she wanted to make sure it was the easiest route. And it's confusing because you see somebody who was able to get power multiple times in the game. And she was one of those players. But it didn't amount to anything because when she had the time to strike, it was, what can I do to ensure that there is no blood on my hands? Well, then at that point, you don't need to win power. You don't need to be in power positions. You could play a game where you're playing lay low, which she was good at. She was not in danger. And then you just keep making more people upset with your inability to make decisions.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, her incredible indecisiveness was a huge problem. She could have had like a mugger come to her on the street and say, your money or your life. And she would have been like, can I have some time to think about that, please? She made comments at a couple points in the game where she seemingly took offense to others saying she was indecisive, but she admitted to Mike Bloom, I was definitely indecisive. But I don't think that was entirely bad of me to be indecisive. I see it as weighing out all of the options. Let's be real. It wasn't just weighing out all the options. She would go on for as long as she had before making a decision, and she still wanted help. In her first HOH, she had 2 nominees but needed a third and said, I'm just looking for one person to help me out, and no one is willing to do that right now. Of course, by help me out, she means be stupid and volunteer like Kelley. Guess what, Lauren? They aren't there to help you out. You won HOH, you make the nominations. But no, she literally told Rachel later, this is so hard. I just wish someone could tell me what to do.
And that level of dependency she had on Vince, to me, did not make as much sense, especially as the game kept going forward and forward, because she really could see all her allies around her were getting picked off one by one by one. And we talk about the Riley decisions, we talk about the Catherine decision. You're seeing all these things happen. One cause really is Vince a big part of it. And you continuously believe in him, even though every other player is kind of telling you, like, hey, girl, I'm telling you, like, I still go back to that room. I think it was in the storage room where Rachel was talking to her and telling her, hey, don't need to let this guy push you into decisions. You don't need to trust it. And she got offended. And she went to Vince and told Vince, this is what Rachel is saying about you. And this game is where we've seen so many players play for other people. I mean, we go back to Preacher when we talk about, I think it was Zach. Or, no, it wasn't Zach. It was, I'm forgetting the names already. But one of the players basically gave their game up for Lauren, essentially, because they were like, I don't want her to go home. I don't want to use the power, that special veto power. We're seeing people give up. Yeah. Oh, okay. We're seeing players give up their game. And I thought for her, Lauren, I was like, maybe she could be the manipulator. She can make people give up their games for her. But no, she ended it how she started. She gave up her game for somebody else.
And the thing is, she didn't make Zach do it. He foolishly did it himself. She didn't exert any power. She is not Morgan. She was not exerting any power. She didn't even know he had it until after he had made his decision. So, yeah. And then, her indecisiveness wasn't just limited to when she was HOH or had power. It was any decision. When she won that veto and was considering using it on Vince, she went back and forth so many times, and literally back and forth. Back to Rachel, fourth to Vince. Back to Rachel, fourth to Vince. And then, despite her previously telling Rachel that she, wanted someone to tell her what to do during her HOH that I mentioned, when Rachel did tell her not to use the veto or else, Lauren ignored it, used the veto, and then was surprised by the consequences. But Really, you said it, the ripple effect. Consequences were what she feared the most out of everything and everyone that she was scared of. She told Dalton Ross, I think my biggest weakness for sure was the kind of fear of not even necessarily upsetting people, but from a game perspective, upsetting the people that would come for me because of my actions. I think if I would have been more set in my ways and done what I wanted to do rather than really taking in each person's opinion, then I maybe could have gone farther. So she defended her indecisiveness to Mike Bloom, but admitted she shouldn't have been so indecisive to Dalton Ross. She couldn't even make up her mind about not making up her mind.
And then they say they have no regrets of how the game is played. I know that's
Yeah.
your biggest pet peeve over there. It's become, I think maybe a little of David has rubbed off on me because it's become my pet peeve. It's that if a game for $750,000, you know what you did wrong. If you do, if you're aware enough, and
Right.
these players do, they say, "Oh, this is where I went wrong. I wouldn't regret anything." You probably should. You
Yeah.
probably should. Because for somebody like Lauren, she had a winnable game if she made certain decisions at point.
Yeah.
She had the autonomy. She had the ability. She was a player that was in the crux of the road that just chose the wrong road to go down to. And that's the frustrating thing, is seeing a player who has the ability to win the game or go even farther in the game, because she went this far with very minimal effort in forms of strategy, really. Her scheming and plotting was not a complex thing, but she was able to because of her personality, how she maneuvered herself, get very far. So just a little bit more, and she would have maybe been in the top final two.
Yeah. Yeah. But because, you mentioned this earlier, because of these problems and more, both of her HOHs were flops. She nominated people who were on her side, or at least not actively against her, and then she made excuses. After her first HOH, Lauren told Adrian, people were assuming I didn't want to get blood on my hands. And I'm over here like, assuming? You made it your whole mission as HOH to avoid rocking the boat as much as possible. There was no assuming. And then for her second HOH, she wanted to have an impactful week, but she was so scared about having another decision to make that she threw the veto, which allowed Morgan to win it. Meaning we ended up with Will going instead of maybe Morgan herself. Now imagine how different the rest of Lauren's game would have been if she hadn't thrown that veto.
So different. I mean, we see different players to be able to be up there. We see potential allies for her to work her way through there. And it also gives a point to show I'm making autonomy here. I've had many decisions in my game that I've chose to take the backseat or let somebody else get the blood. But now when the moment matters most, I'm now taking the helm. I'm here to be the Kingslayer. I'm here to win this game. Do you think Vince has told me how to play this game? No, I know how to take him out at the end. I mean, there's so many roads she could have taken. I mean, if she just chose, but that's the game, right? You choose when to strike and you choose don't to. And with Kelley, she didn't even know the game. She didn't know when to strike. And with Lauren, she just really chose the path of least resistance.
Right. And then it comes back to, to kind of wrap up rule one here. It comes back to something I mentioned earlier. When Lauren finally did talk to Morgan and Ashley on Tuesday this week, the problem I hinted at earlier about her not being willing to lie really came out, because they repeatedly asked her for promises that she wouldn't nominate them if she won HOH, and she tried to dodge it every time, which made it clear to them that she would come after them if they saved her. So why would they want to do that? And yet she just couldn't bring herself to lie in Big Brother.
And they're not your allies. You can go after them. You can do that. It's at this point of the game, no one's going to take it really personal. I mean, maybe they will in the portion of it, but after the game, they'll be okay with it. And as somebody who is a fan, I would hope that she would recognize it. And that's what you sign up for, because she played a game where she really did not hurt too many people.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can move on to the second rule, which is definitely going to be a lot shorter, because it says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. And, considering the length of time we just spent talking about how neither of them schemed and plotted nearly enough, there isn't a whole lot to discuss in this rule. But I have at least two negatives for Kelley and a positive for Lauren. For Kelley, her whole instigating BS was really over scheming. Or it would have been if she had any clue what she was doing. But she was busted when she attempted it, like Jimmy seeing her cornering people, throwing an opinion out there, and then coming back and claiming the person said what she was really saying. Now, I absolutely recognize this type of behavior because I had a couple employees who were like this years ago. The day it was announced I was going to be their new manager, each of them separately came to me and told me things about the other one. So they were having this little war there. And I kind of just nodded along, not knowing what the heck was happening. And then later I found out they took those nods and exaggerated them into telling other people I agreed with them and even saying that I had been the one who said it to them. So it was totally the same thing that Kelley was pulling.
Wow, not you. I mean, you have great work analogies, but this one might be my favorite work story right here. I mean, you've played Big Brother in your own workplace. You know how this works, David. Yes, I mean, we saw them not being able to keep their lies straight, trying to do so much here, and thinking. I mean, I think it's just like the misrooted understanding of how the game is played. That people won't fact check, people won't, people will talk to one another. And this idea
Yeah.
is like you're thinking they won't, they will. And she got caught up in lies after lies after lies.
Yeah, exactly. And as the season went on, she complained, everybody thinks I'm a liar no matter what I do. She's the perfect example of the story of the boy who cried wolf. If all you do is lie, then hey, guess what? People will think you're a liar because you are.
And it's a long game. I know we
Yeah.
do these comparisons a lot where we say, okay, between survivors, but this is such a long game where your lives will catch up with you on Survivor, but especially Big Brother. 99 days, people will cross check, and there's nothing to talk about. And so when there's nothing to talk about, people are going to figure out things to talk about. And whoa, what did Kelley say? We have our Julie Chen Moonves. What did she say of the day? I think they had their. What did Kelley say of the day?
Yeah, and just so people understand, because like 5 minutes ago we were talking about Lauren not lying. The kind of lies that Kelley told were not lies to help her progress in the game. Like if Lauren had lied to Morgan and Ashley, if they had believed her, she could have moved forward in the game at their expense. Kelley's lies were like just for fun.
Yeah, it's wanting to cause chaos, and she knew she was causing chaos. That's the
Right.
thing. It's like it's wanting to do that, and that's part of her whole, game point. She's like, oh well, if I make him mad, I make him mad. She likes to do that, and it's when it's not game related. I mean, it just breaks again. That's why she is the antithesis of the rules,
Right.
because none of it goes towards it.
Yeah. Now, Lauren, I don't think had any real issues with over scheming, but actually, as I mentioned, did serve as a good example of following this rule when it came to one area, and that is being in a showman's duo. In her preseason interview, she specifically answered the question about being in a showmance by saying the goal is to win. So if a showmance will help that goal, she might do it, but she won't let it jeopardize her game. And then when Zach was crushing hard on her, she actually held on to what she said, which is incredibly rare. She helped to vote him out. And when Rachel later asked if she wanted to date him, she said she didn't know. She wanted to focus on the game. So, whatever else we have to say about Lauren's game, she at least did this right. Or I guess it could be that, she didn't know if she wanted to date him and therefore she couldn't make a decision. So she just voted him out instead.
I mean, we say it's a form of strategy, and this is part of it. But I think, unfortunately, it was just more so Lauren being Lauren, the inability to make that decision, and we see that happen here. I will give her kudos a little bit to trying to keep, all her strategy maybe only to Vince almost. I mean, she talked games slightly with Ava and some other players as we moved on, but uh, as the game progressed, she tried not. It became a detriment to her, where she kept her scheming and plotting a little bit more too much on an island here.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, the third rule talks about the need to be flexible. And I don't even know how you can answer this question, but I'll ask it anyway. Was Kelley flexible?
Kelley was incredibly flexible because she decided to do whatever she wanted to do. No, she in the game wise, there was no flexibility in her game because she was so chaotic. She had no concrete plans. And to be flexible, I'm going to add this addendum because we always say you have to be pressured to do it. To be flexible, you must have a plan A first. There was never a
Yes.
plan A for her. So there was no room to change what the plan would be because she was consistently changing her game, regardless if a plan was working or not.
Yeah, I mean that's practically, you're practically reading my notes here too. If you're going to be flexible, you have to have a starting point, and she didn't have one. She was all over the place without a clue. Doing random things does not count as flexibility. I guess the way we could say it is she was inflexible in terms of being completely unwilling or unable to learn how to play Big Brother.
That's the Kelley rule right there.
Yeah,
You need
yeah.
to actually play the game to
Yeah.
have a number associated with you on this.
Yeah. Now, Lauren had a more typical type of problem with this rule. We already discussed how she said her indecisiveness stemmed from wanting to consider every option. But the problem was it seemed, even after always considering, the option she chose was to do whatever Vince wanted to do. She hooked herself up to that final two train early on and was never willing to jump off. In fact, she was so stuck on that final two deal that she was blind to the obvious situation that Vince had multiple such deals. Even after all the discussion about Vince having his hand in so many pots and Vince having a number one and a number two and multiple other numbers, and how clear it was that he was receiving direction from Morgan, she still clung to that final two like it was a deal written in her blood. Again, she's been watching the show since she was little, and yet she still didn't understand the idea that alliances usually don't last all season long.
I think she would have been, if I have to say it's surprising, but probably the most inflexible player we've had this entire season. And so I don't count Kelley. She's at NA. She was disqualified.
Yeah.
The reason why I say this is because she had so many opportunities to choose and change up her game when she was in the HOH, when she was making decisions, or when she was going to use or not use a veto. When she saw all the information of this is how Vince is playing. He has this cheat man's with Morgan. Should I trust our relationship over that? So many chances she had to able to right the ship. And also we see players like Rachel and other players who kind of tried to talk to her and being like, hey, let's work something out. Let's talk. Nothing there. So I find this inability to want to work with other people, change your plans when you are in positions of power and also positions where you have autonomy to actually be increasingly worse for her because she had more ability to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, the fourth rule says players should not let their emotions control them. And once again, we have a situation where both Kelley and Lauren failed in different ways. Kelley's game was, of course, all emotion, no thought, no logic, just doing whatever came into her head. And also a lot of emotionally holding a grudge and refusing to work with people because of it. We already talked about people not wanting to work with her, but she also refused to work with people because of some slight, real or imagined, that she could never get over. Whether it was holding on to Vince going against a deal in week 3 or telling Keanu she would never work with Rachel because of something she'd said weeks earlier that didn't sit right with her, she held on to that grudge.
Yeah, and I think if there was going to say any form of strategy with Kelley, it would be this is the portion of like her emotions controlled how she wanted to play the game, who she wanted to work with, and if she felt good by somebody, I will work with you. But if I don't feel good with you, I won't work with you. I mean, it was all we talk about Ava being the aura master going into it, but truly, she was the player who really was putting their aura and trying to feel people out because if she had a good feeling, it'd be great. I mean, and also she would get so upset when people weren't working with her plan or putting her on the block, even though she said, put me on the block. I mean, Kelley's such a chaotic player that these rules are hard to actually put her to.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, F, F, F each time. Um, I, even in the wall comp, I mean, I shouldn't have to be talking about rules in the wall comp, but even there, her emotions took over. She was there long enough that she got bored and started messing around. Her falling from the wall because she was doing something stupid was the most on brand thing ever.
Yeah, it comes down to she is just happy to be there, David, and we
Sometimes she
saw
wasn't
that.
even happy. She
Yeah,
was just, there.
I think she was ready to whatever result happened. I think for her kept fighting. And here's one thing I will say in her positive. Truly, I think the spirit for her to fight week in and week out, go on that block because we did see how much it impacted her. Her emotions also motivated her in a way where she didn't give up. I will give her that. Maybe she didn't shoot straight. Maybe she was shot at herself, but she made sure that she kept fighting in and out. And it was kind of like, her own mistakes that she goes home for, obviously. But I think her wanting to prove other people wrong, her feeling slighted is what kind of motivated her to keep on trying hard in these competitions.
Yeah, yeah, I think I'd agree with that.
We'll
All
give
right.
her
Well, we've
one.
already
We'll give
talked
her
about
something.
the. Yeah, yeah. We've already talked about Lauren not letting herself get into a showmance with Zach because she wanted to focus on the game. How do you think she did overall in this rule?
I want to say yes. I feel like she really kept an even keel with her emotions to not let showmances, not kind of let her detract from other things. But I also do feel like, especially with the Vince relationship, like I feel like when Vince got slighted, she got offended on his behalf. Like there were ungame related things. And I just go back to the Rachel Riley conversations when she basically tells her, like, this guy's a bum and you don't need to listen to him. And she felt so slighted that, oh, you're trying to, you know, talk like you know me. You're trying to tell me how to play this game. This level of I'm so frustrated at you, I think kind of manifested in her way in other ways too, that where she was unable to make game moves that would benefit her game because she was so platonically emotionally involved with Vince.
Truly platonically. Um, yeah, I don't think I really have much to add for her here. I mean, getting mad or wanting to do something because someone was a friend or whatever, those are all decisions, and we know how she felt about those. So it was probably easier to just not worry about the emotions because they would only cause more problems. Although I guess being scared is an emotion, and that was so prevalent in her game that there are literally whole social media accounts dedicated to just posting whenever she said she was scared about something.
That I guess that is an emotion, the
Yeah,
worry that in the not wanting to make certain moves. So yeah, that's there.
not wanting to make certain moves, not wanting to be in the dark, not wanting to eat certain foods other than like chicken nuggets. All of those things are scary. So,
They very much can be. They
yes.
very much can be.
All right. Well, we can go to the fifth rule, which says players need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. And this is going to be another long one, folks. It is safe to say that Kelley completely failed in this one as well. She called herself irritating when she spoke to Julie after being evicted. But she told Rachel at one point a few weeks back that she's good at pretending to like people. Except she really isn't, and people could see through it. She told Keanu she practiced fake crying, and then he told others, which kind of negates the point of fake crying because everyone knows you're faking. But she didn't know everyone else was aware, so she kept trying to use it. Kelley liked to play the victim. She would instigate something, people would get justifiably upset at her, and then she'd run and cry to someone to get attention. Or in the case like after Zingbot, she ran and fake cried in her bed and then kept pausing and looking around to see if anyone noticed. But quite hilariously, nobody ever did. She just sat there fake crying, popped her head up. Nobody was there. And nope, never happened. Now, the situation like this, the example like this that got the most attention and which was not exactly portrayed 100% accurately on TV, was Winegate, Hammockgate, Huggate. Now, I believe we discussed it when it happened, but just a brief recap. Rachel was annoyed at people giving fake compliments and made a comment about needing another drink. Kelley ran this to Vince, and word got back to Rachel. She'd had it with Kelley's behavior at this point, and later, Kelley tried to join Rachel and others by the hammock, but Rachel said there's no room. Then Kelley tried to give Rachel a hug goodnight, but Rachel said no. Kelley pretended to have no idea why Rachel would be mad. Um, I guess it's possible she actually was clueless. It's hard to say with Kelley. And she asked, "Is this because I haven't been cleaning?" Which I guess does lean towards the clueless part. Rachel sarcastically said, "Yes, yes, that's the reason." Kelley left and immediately ran up to the HOH room to cry to Vince and Keanu and tell her slanted version of the story.
Yeah, I think that it was very apparent when we look at her interview with Julie, and she was very forefront that I irritated people. She knew it. She knew how her personality was, and here's the thing: is I always one of my pet peeves is when somebody says something kind of mean, and they're like, "Well, I'm just being honest." Well, no, and sometimes they're not being honest, and no one
Yeah.
need to hear, like it's not needed. And I feel like some people very value and they look at that as like bluntness. They're like, "Oh, I'm straightforward." No, you're just being a jerk. And I think some people view their irritation as maybe more quirky. And I think for Kelley, when she got on people's nerves, she kind of looked at it as like, "Oh, that's just me." And she did that a lot with every single player in the house.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of the primary reasons where people are like, "We need to get her out." And it didn't want to work with Kelley, or even when they worked with Kelley, she would still find a way to annoy them, her allies, and everyone around them. So she didn't try to even hide it. She's still an F for me on this one. This is an
Oh,
A
yeah.
because she doesn't try.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, players did not buy Kelley's nonsense, but unfortunately, some viewers have, and they complained about her being excluded. But the fact is, Kelley excluded herself. Whenever anyone would try to bring her in, she would turn on them. She failed to form relationships and then got upset that she didn't have relationships. I mentioned in Rule 1 how she told Julie that people came to her. But no, people didn't come to her. They literally ran away from her. I I posted a video today with a clip of Mickey hearing Kelley coming and jumping up to run out of the room. Keanu talked on the live feeds about pretending to be asleep when he knew she was coming. Nobody wanted to deal with her.
No, and it's. I mean, here's the thing. I don't love talking about players on this rule so much in the fact that they're like, oh, they're annoying or they're this stuff. But she knows this, she owns it. So I feel a lot better to be able to talk about this with her because it was very purposeful. And that's the strange thing. She didn't try not to be purposeful to kind of irritate people. And, that's what you're going to have in here. You have 16 people all in a house. You're going to annoy people. But it felt like she went out of her way to do things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And she was aware of that versus someone like Keanu who does that. But I feel like his illusions. But he doesn't. He's not
Totally
aware
unaware.
of it.
Yes.
So it's almost like a different thing where it's like there's a difference between ignorance and stupidity. And right here, it's like, why are you trying to annoy people? Like, why do you want to do this in this game?
Yeah, like I said, she did it to herself. Even when someone would try to help her, as I discussed in Rule 1, she would turn on them. And again, Rachel is a perfect example. She tried to give Kelley tips on how to be more likable. Kelley took that and ran around saying, Rachel said, nobody likes me and then I don't have any friends, which, I mean, that isn't what Rachel said, though it is essentially true. And yet, Rachel still tried, and Kelley kept turning on her at every opportunity. Kelley told Mickey about the whole grilled cheese debacle where Rachel was upset, which led to Mickey getting mad at Rachel. And when Rachel confronted Kelley claimed, oh, it wasn't malicious. I thought you two could fix things, which is an absolute load of BS. Shortly after that, Rachel told her something else and made her promise she wouldn't tell anyone. Kelley promised, left the room, and literally within 3 minutes was telling other people. It just never stopped. In fact, it got worse because Kelley got very personal in her attacks behind Rachel's back, saying things like, I feel bad for Rachel's daughter. What a role model. This is on the internet forever. Her grandkids can watch her. And then also saying she wanted to send Rachel first to jury so she would be there alone on her anniversary. These were personal attacks against a woman who tried to help her.
Yeah, and it's these are your potential allies, people you can work with from a game related point, and they like it's we've seen this in the house. This has been a house where a lot of people have been catty, very catty with each other and say this and that. Uh, and I think it's just kind of strange because sometimes you see that when you're being wronged by a player, where you're like, all right, you're going to say this about this player because they wronged you. In Kelly's instance with the Rachel one, it's a weird thing going on there. And I don't know if it's because other people were kind of doing it too, so she felt like she could fit in with this part. It doesn't excuse it by any means, but yeah, it's really hitting your only car ride out.
Yeah.
Your person who's like taking you out there, trying to help you out. And I think people have kind of forgotten portions of that because of the underdog story we've seen of Kelly, and then also this feeling of, oh man, people have mistreated Kelly because of she's on the block so much, et cetera, et cetera. Rachel wasn't that person. There's a lot of players who didn't do that, and also a lot of it was game related because she's the one who put herself in that
Right.
position.
Right.
So it's hard to get mad at people, Kelly, when you're the one doing it to yourself and then still taking it out on the wrong people. I mean, she didn't try to hide this and she didn't play Big Brother. And that's the issue. We can go in circles about Kelly with rule 1, 2, 3, so on. She didn't play the game of Big Brother. She was playing an entire different game.
Yeah.
And because this season is the way it is, you don't need to play Big Brother to get far this season.
Yeah. Now that's unfortunately true. And like you said, yeah, she kept doing it. And it wasn't only about Rachel. She never stopped trying to play the victim. Just a week ago, Keanu called Kelly out on the way she was behaving with him, and she stormed away from him angrily and talked about him as if he had been the one who did something wrong. But no, in this case, which is it's rare, but no, Keanu was totally in the right, and he called her out. And of course, her then complaining about it got back to Keanu, and she pissed off one of her few remaining people who might have been able to work with her.
Secrets don't stay secrets in this house.
No.
Like that's the one thing. And it's funny because you have this group of people who are singular, I can't even speak right now, individuals, or as I said, individuals who aren't working with other alliances and players band together, but they always just eat themselves at the limb. And Kelly was the core of that. No one could work with Kelly. And you literally see that she is third is being generous, but Vince is third person, even though he's putting them all up. He has Morgan, he has Lauren, and then his third alliance right there is Kelly, or she thinks that. Even that won't snap her out of it, and she just decides to turn on every single other person. We saw that week in and week out. And I mean, I would love to say this is a reason why I sent her home, but it's just a combination of it all.
Right. Yeah. I mean, throughout the game, from the start, we saw her saying things that made no sense in a game that has such a big social aspect. She repeatedly brought up Zach's $10,000 win in a way that got back to him and annoyed him. She called the guys dumbbells. She called out alliances. Just a week or so ago, she saw Vince and Keanu playing pool and ran over to scatter the balls around while giggling like a toddler. Like, this is literally something a toddler would do. She is 30. Even at the beginning, Amy said, Kelly is annoying as bleep. She thinks she's so cute and funny. Will said earlier, she's crazy. Kelly is crazy. Ava responded, she cray-cray. I told her, you kind of scare me. Will added, I sleep right across from her. There are times when I woke up and Kelly is just looking. Like this bleep is crazy. Later in the season, Ava was lying by herself in the have-not bed saying, Kelly is bleeping nuts. And more recently, Kelly, who was supposedly in an alliance with Ava, got her so annoyed and on Ava's last nerve because she was just doing too much of this nonsense. In another conversation, Ashley said, I don't want to live with her in jury. And Will replied, it's hard enough living with her in here. And now the poor guy's going to have to deal with that.
It's going to be a fun jury segment when we see it between the group of people we have there: Rachel, Will, Kelly, Lauren. I mean, games. I would say all four very different games.
Yes. Yes. I think they'll be happy that Kelly is there, or happy that Kelly is out, but not happy that Kelly is with them.
Yes.
I mean, we both talked about how she called herself irritating to Julie.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, she actually said she aimed to be irritating. This was on purpose. And we certainly saw this in the
Mm-hmm.
house. At one point, she told Vince that he could tell Keanu something to poke at him. And she said, I love poking. Vince replied, you love stressing people out. And Kelley admitted, I do love stressing people out. I can't poke in my regular life. It's frowned upon in society. Well, guess what, Kelley? It's frowned upon in Big Brother, too. And that just caught up to her in so many ways, such as Ashley recently telling Kelley, me wanting you out had to do with the things you've said about me. And Kelley said, playing the innocent or just truly not knowing, like what? And Ashley said, go think of everything you've ever said. It's all gotten back to me. And then Ashley said another time, every time I start to feel bad for the girl, she does something to make me despise her. Kelley is not a sweet girl. She's not nice.
I think that puts it all together where you have people who would like to work with you, understand the position, strategic positions near the end game, that it might be beneficial for their game for you to be there. But because of everything you've said, everything you've done, your unkind words, that is ultimately the reason where they're like, I still don't want her in this house.
Right.
And that's a lot.
Yeah.
Because you're making a decision for $750,000. You're like, still, nah, screw her. I cannot stand her.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the big problem was Kelley decided to be an instigator to stir things up. She spread rumors. And, before people began seeing who the problem was, her, she started some arguments. But Kelley being Kelley, she couldn't keep it to herself. So she told others, like Lauren, and it got all around the house. Then she couldn't understand why people called her an instigator, much like earlier. She couldn't understand why people called her a liar. She even had a moment of clarity early on, asking herself, why do I instigate so much? It's like all I do is cause problems and I cause problems for myself. But as with the other things we've discussed, she didn't learn. She had that moment and then went right back to acting in her usual bizarre way. As she told Ashley at one point, what you see is what you get. I'm a loose cannon. That's how I am. I cause chaos. I do that in my regular life.
I don't know. She says, what she said, she is a business owner of multiple businesses. And I just can't imagine you can run businesses or work or do anything in the real world where you're this chaotic and you're making everyone around you upset. It seems like maybe this was something she's wanting to do for so long in that regard, like she mentions, where she wants to frustrate people. Like she can poke at people here because this is not the real world. It's just a game for $750,000.
Yeah, that's
so it's
yeah, no
not a
biggie.
big deal. No.
Well, moving on from Kelley, Lauren told Dalton Ross, I think my biggest strengths in the game were the connections and relationships that I had in the house. I think that those connections and relationships took me very far and also played a part in the reason that I wasn't on the block until day 70, even with 2 HOH wins. So, what do you think? Was that the primary reason she wasn't nominated until then?
I think, her kindness, honestly, with when we talk about Lauren and talking about like how she was able to navigate in the game, we see that okay, she was very well liked by most people, but also it was some people felt very indifferent by her even near the end of the game because they didn't feel some form of strategy there. So yes, it got her far in the game, but I think it was who do we have left now rather than
Well,
what do we do?
yeah, I agree. I was going to say, I think the main reason she wasn't nominated till that point was less about her social game and more that she was mostly invisible. Uh, you know, there were so many other things happening as people targeted the bigger threats that she didn't rise to that surface. Now, don't get me wrong. I do think she had a good social game in terms of being friendly with some of the people in the house, but it's not like it was the greatest we've ever seen. She was just nice and there, kind of like Zingbot said. But at least she didn't go out of her way to piss people off.
Yeah, she was a pleasant person. And we might be able to say that early on in the game, her social game and charm. You know what? No, I'm going to recant that. I don't know if it was a social game or charm. I think it was, ironically, we have some house guests who just are just girl crazy or just fall in love with anything they see, or they're just will sacrifice their games for people.
I can't
And
imagine
that's
who you're talking about.
and I don't know, like, if that is truly a power of hers, a good social game, or it's just her existing. If it wasn't Lauren, it might have been somebody else. And I feel like she never took advantage of those. I feel like a good social game is not just having a good personality and being kind, great with other people
Right.
around you. It's utilizing what relationships you have with people and do that with other people. And also, we've talked about this, that Lauren put herself on an island. She really did not work with other people outside of a very set few people, and never was flexible in changing that. So if your social game is so good, that's a negative, not working with other people on that portion, or just even conversing with them, talking about strategy. She didn't do that.
Yeah. 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 One part that definitely was lacking in her social game was something we discussed in Rule 1, and well, you just mentioned she was friendly with some of the people in the house. And that, like you said, that's just not very smart. If she made it to the end, it seems like she expected to try to win by just being nice. She even suggested as much to Vince. But she also said back in week 3, I'm so bad at talking to people. That would have especially come back to bite her as she tried to get votes from people she hadn't talked to, like Rachel, Will, Morgan, Ashley, etc. It ended up not mattering in part because her lack of relationships with some of those same people helped make it easier for them to vote her out now.
Exactly. And you feel, I think, a difficult thing when you go deep in the game is having relationships and how to vote people off. Like we talked about Will last week, where it hurt. It really hurt players to vote Will out. If there was one player that could sway the players to vote in the same way, probably Will, but he didn't really utilize it, his ability to really make him feel guilty. No one felt guilty about Lauren, really. Even Vince, her closest ally, is like sad, but like, oh, okay, it's well, one more step to 750. Something had to happen. Like he's sad on the strategic reason, where the person, I mean, he might say he isn't, but this person that he knew was like he could beat and also would still sacrifice her game is gone. So that sucks.
Yeah.
But no one felt bad about voting her out because she did not utilize any form of relationship to benefit her game.
Yeah. Okay, we could go to the 6th rule, which says not to be too much of a threat. Kelley, I feel like, went through kind of a cycle with her threat level. Early on, she quickly became a comp threat because of her repeated wins, even if they weren't nearly as impressive as they seemed on paper. Then she became so annoying that people knew she wasn't a threat to win and could be ignored in favor of worrying about others. I remember saying when Rachel won HOH that a downside for me was Kelley would be safe because she'd slipped into that spot of not being the same threat level as some of the others. But then that all flipped back around. Ashley and Morgan talked about how everyone knew they could beat Kelley at the end. So that meant everyone would be tempted to take her to final 2. But then that would make things difficult for them to get there, meaning it made sense to evict her now. Now, I know a number of viewers may be saying, wait, if anyone can beat her at final 2, shouldn't everyone want to bring her? In theory, yes. But that's where the second part comes in. It takes away a potential spot they could be fighting for. They would have to work around Kelley while also hoping Kelley herself didn't win HOH because she would definitely be coming for them. So, in that weird way, she went from being a threat to not being a threat to being a threat because she wasn't really a threat.
Wholeheartedly agree. I think when we talk about this for one being a threat, we have to not think of it as a threat to win the game, because it can be that, but a threat to your game as the
Right.
player's POV. And these players look at Kelley right before was a pawn to put up there when we have 3 options, but now it's like, okay, if I'm next to her, I'm probably going home. Or if she has the ability to win these competitions, especially in a house that's like very, like, it's skewed one way. If she's still in the house of Keanu, you have a really strong level. These people are going to win these competitions right here. It becomes such a threatening level end game because one, I think that's even scarier than a player who's going to win the game. It's a player who's not going to win the game, who can win competitions, because it will take you out as a potential person. And maybe you fancy your chances against somebody else where they're like, okay, we'll take each other. We know we need each other. Versus with Kelley, who is she going to take? She'll take anybody she wants to take. I mean,
Right.
she's a enigma, chaotic threat. Her threat level is probably the strongest out of anyone left at that point.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know who she thinks she can beat. Morgan and Ashley were talking about it, and Ashley thinks that Kelley might believe she can beat Ashley. But even so, you're going to take that risk that Kelley's going to win and take you along? I mean, why would she do that? She'd rather take her pal Ava. Who cares who wins? Let's just have fun. So, and someone like Morgan knows she's never taking her.
Oh yeah, wholeheartedly. I do think that Kelley would have taken Keanu. I think she would have if Keanu was down there and she's just, I'm going to take you. We went through it all together. Let's like. I think
Well,
she was
right.
playing a game as a big middle finger to everybody else at that point, and it was
Yeah.
like, how can we make everyone else mad if both of us aren't here?
Yeah. Now, there was another factor in how much of a threat she was, which was she was in that sort of alliance with Lauren and Ava. And I say sort of because you couldn't exactly count on either Kelley or Ava to do anything strategic. Someone might touch her, Ava's arm, and there goes that whole plan. But they did hang out together and were seen as a trio by the others. So if they had decided to evict Keanu, that would have left that trio in there and given them an opportunity to actually put up a fight and possibly take control of the game. So for that portion, it wasn't Kelley in particular who was the threat. It was that combination of the three.
The potential was there.
Right. Now, as for Lauren, she was, of course, also a part of that trio and therefore a threat in that way. But by the time of the second eviction, that trio was already no more. Still, it was very clear that Lauren was on the other side of the Vince tug of war. She pulled one way on Vince while Morgan and Ashley pulled the other way. So far this week, Morgan had won every match. But there's only one way to be certain that Lauren doesn't have a comeback, and that's to get rid of the competition.
Yeah, and I think that all of that together, and I still think you worry that maybe she might have some friends in the jury eventually. There's a potential for Lauren to craft a good story where she can play the role of, hey, I didn't upset people and you upset a lot of people. So she is the only player in that house. And I think for a bit too, right beforehand, she wasn't on the block at all. So they had to push to get her on the block as well too. So there were parts of her threat level that were kind of, she peaked and then it kind of went down from there.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think there was at least some social aspect to it, or at least it looked that way. It's hard to know exactly what was going through Morgan's mind, but a few times we saw her getting upset in a way that I'm just going to say looked like jealousy when Vince spent what she considered to be too much time with Lauren. She even saw them having fun on the HOH screen one time this week and got visibly upset and decided for sure Lauren had to go.
Yeah, I mean, there's there's that aspect too, the jealousy portion of it. I mean, when you start to visualize yourself get to the end and you start seeing all these other players make you start to worry, right? You start to worry which allies of yourselves will align yourself with them. I mean, for Morgan too, the only person that could maybe sway Vince to do something that she didn't want him to do was Lauren. So I mean,
Right.
that becomes for her game such a huge threat. And I think it's the irony of that for Lauren, she could not see that. She could not see, or maybe she did kind of see, but she didn't believe it. She, for whatever reason, thought Vince would always choose her first, or Final Two was so much more important. But you see what's happening in front of you.
Right. Yeah. Now, even before all of that, going all the way back to July, those sweet days of July before we knew what was going to happen this season. Ashley had Lauren clocked. Amy, remember her? You should. I mentioned her earlier. Had mentioned how Lauren was sweet, but Ashley replied, "Don't get it twisted. She's sweet, but she's smart. She's a super fan. She's laying low on purpose." And I do think Lauren was smart, certainly a threat to win comps. I mean, she destroyed the two blockbuster champs there, destroyed them in the blockbuster.
She did.
I mean, it wasn't even anywhere near close. If If Lauren hadn't been in that comp, it would have taken the whole 2 hours for the other two to finish it. But anyway, over time, the main thing was, though, that she clearly became a threat to Morgan's ability to control Vince and therefore the game overall.
If Morgan wins this game, like if she gets in, I think one of her most impressive moves will actually be to isolate Vince and take out Lauren. We were really seeing her really go into utilizing her ability in the game and striking. And I feel like that's the reason why I'm bringing it up too is I feel sad knowing that I feel like Lauren could have been able to be that person because she had the opportunity and she just needed the voice, like the instinct, the killer instinct to take that strike. If she was like, let's get Morgan out, let me make sure I isolate Vince. And she is in a great position. And she had the opportunities to do so.
Yeah. Okay, we can move to the 7th rule, which says to trust almost nobody. Kelley basically never trusted anyone, so I don't really, I don't have anything to say about her here. Do you?
I mean, I think the only thing I would say is that the idea that she would give herself up on the block would get trust with people, and that's where she just kind of went wrong in so many ways. But an inability to understand how the game is played, but she thought that you could curry favor that way, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah. All right, we'll move quickly to Lauren, who is exactly the opposite, because she put absolute 100% full trust in Vince to a ridiculous extent, even when she saw it was hurting her. As she told him this week, I committed myself to this final 2, and every decision you have made makes my game 20 million times harder. Yet she still stuck it out. She even said after she was evicted, I really trusted his word whenever he told me I was safe week after week. So I continued to give him that loyalty. Maybe that was silly of me. Yes, Lauren, it definitely was silly of you.
So silly. And it's so frustrating because you see what you're doing wrong. Everyone's told you what Vince is doing. I mean, this man is cheating on his actual relationship, but he's also cheating on you within your alliance. You know he is so close with Morgan, and she's trying to get you out. Like she knows she did. And who's in the middle of that? Vince. So how can you not think that, hey, the person I trust my life with in this game, he is closest to the person who's trying to gun for me. Maybe he has some form of idea what's going on about this.
Yeah.
I mean, we see it from the safety chain when it goes back to Rachel, essentially, when she went out and it was that competition where Vince convinces Lauren to pick Morgan, or was it the opposite way? Right?
No, yep, you were right.
It was Lauren to pick Morgan. I mean, you play this game completely for him, and you see him cut you back and forth, and you also have a whole resume of seeing how he's treated each of his allies, got them out one by one by one, and how he's cut you too, Riley, Catherine. I mean, at some point, it's not ignorance, it's like blinders, you're putting in front of your eyes. And yeah.
I think Lauren looked at the safety chain as a win for her. Even though she had to do what he wanted, he still picked her before Morgan. And I think she was like, oh, see, that shows that I'm higher in his mind. What it really shows is he knew if he picked Morgan, Morgan would not pick Lauren next. But he knew he could convince Lauren to pick Morgan next. So that was the best way for him to get his 2 closest allies. He even said that, to get them forward in the game. And she just didn't realize that.
It's impressive. I mean, Vincent's his game is something we'll dissect eventually, but it's impressive that he's been able to juggle both these players and make them as loyal as they are to him. And I think with Lauren more so than anything, and it's I don't know if Vince was there, her game would be the same, whether she would do this with somebody else. But I wish we could see a Lauren who wants to make these moves and not trust somebody wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and then continuing with that trust, and particularly pertinent to this rule, Lauren told Julie after being evicted, if I went home because I was too trusting or had too much faith in people, I guess that's a better way of going home. No, that is a terrible way to leave Big Brother, because it means you didn't know how to play Big Brother, and you should have.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, no, again, I try not to think too much into what players are saying to Julie right afterwards. It's like a coping mechanism for them. But yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that she would play basically the exact same way she would do, and she has no
Yeah.
regrets.
Yeah.
You should have some regrets.
Yeah. Okay, we're at the jury now, so we need to discuss the jury phase in Appendix A. In some ways, we've already covered much of this by discussing how Kelley would have been easy to beat in Final Two, but made things more difficult to get to Final Two, while Lauren could have theoretically been more of a serious opponent to some of them because of her social connections. But I really just don't think that played much of a role. Almost all of the reasons they were voted out were in game, not jury related.
100%. I don't think anyone was worried about them, getting a level of jury votes from any of the players there. And I also think maybe there's a world Vince has thought like, hey, he knows he wants her in the jury because that's a
Right.
vote probably for him. But outside of that,
I mean,
he wasn't the one.
he wanted to face her at the end.
Yeah,
That was his big plan. That was the main cause of all the back and forth was, that Morgan was messing up his plan to,
yeah.
face her and beat her at the end. And so, yeah, he didn't even want her in the jury. He wanted her in the final two with him. But, the best laid plans. Now, I did notice Morgan's goodbye message to Kelley really heaped on the BS about how she had to get Kelley out because Kelley was so scary in mental comps. I have no idea how Kelley will vote in the end. I mean, she may just flip a coin. Nobody knows. But hey, it's worth a try if you're Morgan.
Yeah, and I think if there's a player that's going to work well for, it's probably Kelley. This idea that I think she craves, within the game at least, some form of validation of how she played the game or, how she struggled through it. I'm unsure if she will receive that much for Jury House, so maybe that will be the last, leading message she'll get about that. And maybe that will convince her.
Yeah. All right, it is about time to wrap things up here for these two. So what are your final thoughts about Kelley and Lauren?
Wow, what a season we've had with players that have played in two different identical ways. Where we have a player in Kelley who decided that she does not need a rule book for Big Brother and she will play the game with her own strategy, meaning no strategy. I mean, she is defaulted. She is NA in all of our segments, basically, because it's so difficult to judge her because the game she wanted to play was pure chaos. Unfortunately, in most things, it was not as entertaining to watch because it was just, oh, why are you doing this? But we saw with Lauren, we saw a strategy blossom that looked really incredible where she was playing the middle. She was trying to do different portions of it, work with different people to realize, wait, actually, no, she's not. She is just not making a decision at all. She can win competitions. She can have a social game, but she can do nothing with it. So for two reasons, these people went home. One person for not playing the game and one person for deciding that they will only play the game halfway through. So both of them, not the worst, saddest to see them go.
Yes. Well, we discussed several times how Kelley and Lauren managed to break the same rules, yet played very, very different games, as you said. Kelley came in absolutely clueless and, had never watched it, despite claiming she had. Lauren came in as a supposed superfan who should have known what to do, yet both of them had problems actually taking action. Kelley admitted she didn't even know what a good game is. She just wanted to come in with fresh ideas, which she didn't realize weren't fresh at all. They were actually very stale and rotten, and there were good reasons nobody did things she tried. I gave her a rating of 1 on a scale of 1 to 10 in our preview podcast in predicting how well she would follow these rules, and I was on the mark. We may not be good at winner picks, but apparently I at least got a absolute worst pick here. She came in with zero understanding of the game, and over 70 days later, she leaves still having zero understanding of the game. Because not only did she enter the house with zero knowledge, she was never interested in learning. Instead, she was the embodiment of chaos in the form of an overgrown 5-year-old. Her social game was as bad as her strategic one, and she didn't know how to act around people. Doing bizarre things for no reason, playing the victim when caught. As she told Ashley at one point, what you see is what you get. I'm a loose cannon. That's how I am. I cause chaos. I do that in my regular life, which I mentioned earlier. I'm sure nobody likes it when she does that in real life any more than players liked it in the house with them, or we liked having to watch it. Ashley was spot on in saying, every time I start to feel bad for the girl, she does something to make me despise her. Kelley is not a sweet girl. She's not nice. Between the complete lack of strategic ability and terrible social skills, Kelley should have been out week one. But she kept staying, not because of any strategic or social ability, but because of 2-minute carnival games. At one point, she said, I'm genuinely not here to win. I'm here to make a name for myself. She made a name for herself, all right. It's just not a name I could say on this podcast because there might be children listening. Lauren, on the other hand, did seem like a sweet young woman. Unfortunately, as she herself said, just being nice doesn't win you Big Brother, which is something she should have known coming in. But then she also should have known she would have to talk to people and, look them in the eye and not be scared of everything you think might go bump in the night. Yet here we were with her having all of those issues. Plus, of course, the issue of trusting one person, Vince, 100%, despite him repeatedly showing that he didn't deserve it. I mentioned that Lauren told Julie, if I went home because I was too trusting or had too much faith in people, I guess that's a better way of going home. And again, I say, no, that just means she didn't know how to play. And she should have, because it was very clear that Vince was a puppet for Morgan, despite his claims to the contrary. He clearly did not value her final two the same way she did, because he had so many others. Even with Morgan winning out, Lauren had clearly become a threat to Morgan's future ability to control Vince and the game overall. Morgan was going to do everything in her power to get rid of Lauren and keep her top spot in the game. Both Kelley and Lauren had huge holes in their games. Well, Kelley's whole game was a hole, really. But the thing is, both of them should have known better. Kelley purposely came into the game with zero knowledge or understanding. She should have watched the show beforehand. She should have gained some understanding. She had all sorts of excuses, but it comes down to her being her own fault. Lauren did watch the show for many years and considered herself to be a big fan. Yet she didn't understand that you need to lie in Big Brother. You need to talk to people in Big Brother. Maybe she thought that when she actually got into the house, she'd be able to do those things. I don't know. All I know is she didn't. While Kelley was obviously much, much worse, in one night, we said goodbye to two players who couldn't handle some of the most basic Big Brother skills. And that is why Kelley and Lauren lost.
Week in and week out, I always say you outdo yourself, but seamlessly tying both of them in together is impressive. Let's see if you can do that for a potential 5 evictee
Yeah.
segment.
Yeah, we will have our predictions in a moment after a few other pieces of information. In addition, if you want our full thoughts, we are all over social media where we discuss Big Brother and other topics.
Yes, don't forget we are very active on a number of different social media platforms where we discuss Big Brother and other topics. Survivor coming very soon. On Twitter, Blue Sky, and Instagram, I'm at Ovi Kabir, and on TikTok, I'm at Basmati Boy. But David is truly all over the place, but you can track him down in a few different ways. You can find all his various accounts through his Linktree at Linktree/David Bloomberg, or you can find him directly on Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg.
Yes, I encourage anyone to come over to Blue Sky for not just your Big Brother discussions, but also your Survivor discussions. We need more Survivor people to move over. Once people start moving, it'll be like Big Brother. A whole bunch will. And that's just on Blue Sky. On the video sites, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, I've been posting 3 or more videos per day, usually, where I'm at David Bloomberg TV. They are a combination of thoughts from the episodes, lots of live feed clips, some looking ahead to Survivor 49, occasional musings about the Traders Ireland. So I've mentioned that I'm over 50,000 subscribers on YouTube and over 13,000 on TikTok. So thank you to everyone who's subscribed in either place. Now, speaking of Survivor 49, Jessica Lewis and I already did our preview podcast discussing all of the players. And so you should definitely seek that out. we will be back on Saturday recording a special Why Blank Lost 10th anniversary podcast with Rob dropping by. And so if you want like behind the scenes info and how things have changed over the years, it's just, hopefully it's just going to be a fun podcast where we talk about stuff like that. Then, of course, a week from now, we'll be starting off with the first Survivor Why Blank Lost of the season. Plus, I was back on the Tradar podcast talking about the Traders Ireland episode 9, and I will be hosting the Tradar for episodes 10, 11, and the finale next week as well. It's going to be a very busy week for me. Speaking of a busy week, we should discuss what our plans are for this podcast as well, the one you're actually listening to right now. In past seasons, we have typically included the fourth place player in our final Why Blank 1 podcast with the final 3. This season, though, they're getting rid of the fifth place player on Wednesday and then the fourth place player on Thursday. And then Sunday is the finale. So depending on the scheduling, we will either record a podcast for fifth and fourth, probably on Saturday, and then the winner and other two sometime around Tuesday or Wednesday, or we will end up talking about all 5 in the final Why Blank 1 podcast that'll come out a few days after the Sunday finale.
Yeah, we have trying to figure out schedule-wise if we're going to see all the people. Would love to break it down, but those groups of ones, I mean, it's going to be a long podcast either way. You'll get a lot of information from all of us, and yeah, I'm excited for it, regardless of how we do it.
Yes. So just keep your eye out. If you subscribe, which we'll talk about later, hopefully most of you are subscribed anyway, but if you subscribe or you keep an eye on YouTube, then and social media, we'll talk about what we're doing. All right, now it's time for predictions. As always, I wrote up these before the HOH comp. As I wrote them, I believed it would be the type of comp that Keanu could win. And then the question was, well, what can he do? I figured he would put up Ashley and Ava on the block because he doesn't like the way they've played. He said as much. And I predict Ava will head out the door on Wednesday. So do you want to talk about Wednesday first, and then we'll talk about after that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can talk about I think my prediction is I want my Ava HOH for pure chaos, the player who should supposed to be going home. And we see some form. We see our Vince/Morgan touch the block in some shape or form, maybe a Keanu in there. Ultimately, though, I think we see Morgan go home this week. That is
That's crazy to me. That is absolutely crazy to me.
Everyone sees her on there. They're like, wait, what do we need to do?
But I don't see Vince turning on her. I don't see Ashley turning on her. So it would need to be such a specific set of circumstances.
I feel it. We're going to see that happen. Our second person going home, I think, is my winner pick. I think Ashley is not surviving between this to the final 30. I think your winner pick, Keanu, is winning this game.
Yeah.
I think you might have the accolades here, David, because I think your winner pick might win it.
I mean, that would be such a mixed emotion, like, yay, I got the winner pick right. Oh God, it was Keanu. I mean, a few thoughts about the finale then. So I've already talked, in my opinion, Morgan is in the best position. The question is, as you said, can she make it there?
Mm-hmm.
If she doesn't, I think she beats anyone if she's there.
Yeah.
If she is not there, then we have a few other people to talk about. I don't think Ava can win. I don't think Ava can beat anybody. Vince almost can't win. He might. I mean, I believe he beats Ava.
Yeah.
I believe he could potentially beat Keanu or Ashley based on what I'm about to talk about with Keanu and Ashley. With Ashley, so her plan is to reveal she's a lawyer and she went to Georgetown and she's really smart and she's been playing dumb this whole time. That's great. She has like 2 minutes to get that all out and explain her whole strategy that she has hidden this whole time. I don't know if she can do it. In Survivor, she would have a whole tribal council back and forth to explain her game. And she still might not be able to. It is a risk. It is a risk that I talk about in the rules about it's great to hide your threat level, but if you make it so low, it might be that you can never win the game. And she may be in that spot because I just don't know that she can convince them all. They have thought for, by that time, 2.5 months, almost 3 months, they have thought she's this dummy and she's going to have 2 minutes to convince them that she's not. Then you have Keanu. Keanu, I already talked about, Julie said, oh, he has this great resume. As much as I hate it and as much as she's wrong, some people will look at the easy thing and say, oh, he won a lot of comps, because there are casuals out in the real world who say it. There are casuals in Big Brother who say it. Look, he saved himself when it mattered. I suppose, but that's not playing Big Brother. I mean, Kelley could certainly vote for him for that reason, and maybe others. The thing that I think is more likely to win him the game is that he will speak to what he did with such absolute certainty that it will make the others question reality. Because he will not be speaking in reality. He will be delusional, as he has been the whole time. And he will say, I did this, I did this, I did this, I controlled this, I controlled this. In Survivor, someone from the jury could say, hold up there, Buster. You didn't do that. I did that. And she did that. And she did that. You don't get that in Big Brother. Nobody from the jury, they don't get to talk. They get to ask one predetermined question. Maybe, let's say that he claims he did something and Ashley's on the jury. And she's like, oh, this screwball, I already told him he didn't do that. Okay, she doesn't vote for him. But unless it was hashed out in the jury roundtable ahead of time, nobody else is going to know. And you never know what Keanu's going to claim. So whoever doesn't want Keanu to win, if they're in that jury for the jury roundtable, they need to make sure they convey just how delusional Keanu is for that to get through to people. So I honestly think he could beat a few people based on pure delusional ability, pure delusional storytelling.
I think, yes, your version of how he wins, I think, is correct in a lot of ways. I do think, regardless of, I think people already feel like he has that momentum, the way he can win. And I do think, like, for them, again, our reality is different than the house guest reality, right? And I don't even know if he needs to convince them that much. I truly think he is a front runner to win it, where he's been so. I think him getting in all the arguments with everyone actually benefits him in a way, because he's looked at as like the lovable brother to a lot of these players, where it's like, we fought, we clashed, but that's my person. And I think that's how they're going to view it. I think the biggest thing that's going to be most interesting is, how does Rachel, like, I think that, like, if Ashley's at the end, if she convinces the jury, she talks really well, and which I wouldn't be surprised she does. I think she has a good story she can tell. But to your point, can she get that out quick enough? I'm unsure with the format it has. Does Rachel advocate for Ashley over Keanu, or vice versa? Because I think she has a connection with Rachel Ashley, but then also I think there's a weird relationship between Keanu and Rachel, where she's like, hey, my prodigy, or that's the way he'll frame it. So it's very interesting to see. I think Morgan has the best shot right now to win if she's at the end. I think Keanu is probably the second to me, because I don't know if Vince beats him out. I think Vince has burnt so many people. I don't think Kelley's ever voting for him. I don't know if Will is voting for Vince. So tough. I think especially to how he treats the judges alliance too, potentially.
Right.
We can see there. But it's a dynamic one. I just think the only person who can't beat anybody is Ava, honestly. I don't think she's dead in the water right now at this point.
Yeah. It would be funny if Vince ends up winning because of the Judges Alliance, which was an alliance he never even wanted to join or stay loyal to. He was kind of forced into it. And it would be hilarious if he wins because of that.
100%. It would be. He's been trying to not work with them from the very get-go, essentially. Yeah, it would be, and I think it would be very interesting to see how Morgan goes if she doesn't make it to the end. Because I can really see Morgan be, I'm supporting you, Vince, or it could be very bitter. It could go back and forth. So a lot of dynamic, and we'll find out a lot more at the end of this week. But as we wrap up, I want to encourage people to check the RHAP patron program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. Rob has several only patron podcasts for Big Brother, plus other perks like the Facebook group and Discord. You can help support shows like ours and everything on the network by becoming a patron at robhasawebsite.com/patron.
And make sure you're subscribed, as I mentioned earlier, to all of the RHAP podcasts by going to WeKnowBigBrother.com, or even better yet, WeKnowRealityTV.com, so that you make sure you're still getting the Survivor-related Why Blank Lost podcast, and of course, all the other ones as well. You can select your podcast service of choice and just go from there.
And finally, we want to thank Scott St. Pierre and Jessica Sterling and the whole RHAP and reality TV wrap-ups behind the scenes team for all the work they do editing and posting everything else. We really appreciate everything they do to get our voices from our microphones to your ears. Thank you for everyone for tuning in this week. We had a long episode, I know, but I hope you enjoyed it. We had a lot of things to cover. Let us know your thoughts. Are you sad? Are you happy with Kelley and Lauren and their game? What did we get wrong and what did we get right?
Stop encouraging people to claim we got things wrong. We don't get things wrong. We know Big Brother. We've talked about this.
I opened the floor because usually they agree with us, but I love hearing the other thoughts because I want to see what they got wrong. I want to see their opinions of how wrong they are. And
you can just hop onto my TikTok. You'll see lots of people who get things wrong. Let me tell you.
That is true.
Well, thank you, of course, Ovi, for another great episode, a nice long one here. The two of us will see everyone in either about a week or a week and a half, or both if we see everyone in a week. You could see me and Jessica and Rob in a couple days and then a week. And you can find us on social media in the meantime. So until then, talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.